Hello. In September this year, I did an interview with a comedian called Christian Steele. Christian's mum, Isabel, actually died from COVID-19. Yet despite this, Christian didn't think that we should be going into lockdown anymore. This echoed the thoughts of many other people, including thousands of doctors and scientists, including Dr. Mike Yeadon, the ex-assistant CEO of Pfizer, the company who made the vaccine, and one of the world's leading immunologists. In that interview, Christian, like so many other people, said he believed that the pandemic was being used by our politicians and government as part of a much broader agenda that was aiming to change our normal way of life, freedoms and civil liberties. The timing of Christian saying that was perfect, because just the following month after this year's pandemic, our politicians are now calling for a global reset. In October this year, our Prime Minister Boris Johnson told the Conservative Party conference that the pandemic was going to usher in a social and economic reset. Matt Hancock has said publicly that the pandemic will usher in the fourth industrial revolution and the rise of artificial intelligence in our society. Founder and chairman of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, has said the same thing. He actually said, and I quote, that the pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine and reset our world. He has also spoken about the rise of artificial intelligence. He said at Davos this year, and I quote, that a technological revolution is underway that is blurring the lines between the physical, digital and biological spheres. Put simply, in the words of CNBC, this reset, this fourth industrial revolution, refers to how technologies like artificial intelligence will merge with humans' physical lives. Unelected people like Schwab are, via our politicians, using this pandemic, a pandemic which has brought so much death and suffering to the people of this planet in one way or another, to implement their vision of our world, a world that belongs to us, a world that our children will inherit. The disgrace of this is that these people, whilst being immensely rich and powerful, aren't elected by us. They have no mandate to govern or to implement their vision for our world. Yet because of their wealth and power, they seem to dictate to our politicians and governments, and our politicians simply go along with it. We elect our politicians to serve us and implement the things that we, the people, want, not what this small number of people who are pulling the strings of our politicians want. When were we, the people, ever consulted or asked by our politicians if we wanted Klaus Schwab's and this small number of people's vision for our world's future? When were we asked if we wanted their new normal? The simple answer to that is, we haven't been. I believe that we, as a world, as a human race, are at a crossroads. I believe it's the most important time in the history of mankind. We can go down one of two roads. We can firstly go down the road that our politicians, on behalf of this small number of unelected people, are trying to take us down, which many feel would be a very oppressive and authoritarian road. Our politicians, our government, have already said that the vaccine will not end lockdown or the dystopian measures that we have all suffered. Tedros Adhanom, head of the World Health Organization, has said, and I quote, a vaccine on its own will not end the pandemic. Surveillance will need to continue. People will still need to be traced. Contacts will still need to be tracked and quarantined. We still have a long way to travel. Many feel that if we take this road, we will never go back to normal. The normal that we all know, the normal that we all want. On the other hand, we can go down the road that millions of people want to go down, which is the road to a normal life. Not their new normal, but our normal. The normal normal. And a road to freedom, liberation and peace. But for this to happen, our politicians have to take us down the road that the many want to go down. Our politicians, the people we elect, the people we employ, the people we pay, must start working on behalf of we, the many, and not the few. I wrote a poem called When the Wind Became a Whisper about 2 months ago. It was inspired by a walk I made from my home in Redcar, 260 miles, to Downing Street in London to deliver a letter and poem to my Prime Minister Boris Johnson via my MP. telling him of my concerns and fears for my grandchildren's futures. For me, this was democracy in action. Boris Johnson didn't respond, he didn't listen. This poem is about people peacefully rising on behalf of their children and grandchildren in order to make our politicians, our employees, listen to us and what we want. It's about our voices being heard. People from all over the world have taken part in the video for this poem. People of different colours, races, religions, sexes, nationalities, political views, genders, ages and disabilities have all taken part. They aren't conspiracy theorists or tinfoil hat wearers. They aren't selfish or stupid or any of the other derogatory terms used to brand and marginalise people who are questioning the motives of our politicians. They're just everyday mums and dads and aunties and uncles and grandmas and granddads who are asking questions and who want answers, who care about the futures of their children and who want their politicians to listen to them, to us, the many and not the unelected few. I hope this poem will be a pebble that is dropped into the ocean and which will, in turn, create positive ripples all over this world. I hope, when the wind became a whisper. It started with a whisper that drifted on the breeze, and this whisper gave hope to those in places where hope never blows, and to those who were lost and who had fallen to their knees. And the breeze was born from spirit, and the spirit was a child, and this infant had the power of a hurricane, and a voice that was humble, meek, yet wild. The whisper became a little louder as it swirled and curled down roads and streets, for it settled and rested just long enough to be heard in the places where folk meet. As people joined, the whisper became a voice, and down country lanes this voice it blew, and people in the fields and villages heard it, and they listened and followed because they knew that this voice represented freedom. This voice, deep down, it touched their soul, like truth and heart and passion does, like making love and rock and roll. And so this lone voice became much stronger, and people followed as it gusted through each town, and it picked up those who'd been crushed by life as they lay desperate on the ground. The voice told them all to rise, to no longer be disaffected, and to join the growing throng whose prize was to be heard by those who'd been elected. By the time this voice rolled across each county, people had already felt the word, and the message of love and freedom by so many had been heard. The growing voice blew and breezed and gusted. This now loud voice carried the message of hope and joy far and wide, and people heard the truth at last and trusted, and they left the shadows no more to hide. They let this now mighty tornado sweep them up high and all along, and they all became entwined by hope, by laughter, peace and song. As this gathering voice gale-forced down the motorways and across cities started winging, people looked up to hear the truth it spoke, and all their voices started singing verses of defiance, lyrics that said no more, choruses for a better world where people no longer languished on the floor. By the time this tiny whisper had swept all around the country, it had grown into a huge tsunami, and all the people who had no voice or speech had now become an army. And this army fought with peace and truth, and its weapon was the voice, and light and love were its shield and crest, and freedom was its choice. The voice whistled down the wind. It hurried free and easy through people's hair.
It blew and screamed away the unseen shackles of oppression and intolerance, and made the wicked want to care. It shouted and raised people's flattened spirits. It flew them high as kites, like eagles on the wing that dare. It filled the shadows with its light. This now mighty storm crossed the oceans. It crossed continents and seas. The throng was no longer a whisper, and the wind no more a breeze. It was an unstoppable force of nature, and the world became its host, and it cleared all the darkness before it, in the name of whoever you believe, be it yourself, or Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. This mighty storm breached the walls of corruption and gave courage to the faint of heart. It silenced the architects of control and laid bare all those who'd played their part. The corrupt stood naked before the tempest, their crimes on show for all to see. The whisper and the throng blew away all the corrupt's cruelty and wrong, and blew down the walls they'd used to imprison you and me. And when the storm was over, and the world was lifted from its slavery, once again the wind softly whispered to those who'd followed and thanked them for their bravery. It hushed. You did it for your children. For them you fought this fight. Now go back to your homes and live your lives in warmth and love and peace and light.